Everybody, this is Rashawn Hall with the Whiskey Lifestyle and Part-Time Stories, and we are today with the Assistant Master Distiller at Woodford Reserve, Elizabeth McCall. How are you, Elizabeth?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
First off, if you could just tell us a little bit about your role at Woodford Reserve and, how you got there.
Yeah, so I'm the Assistant Master Distiller for Woodford Reserve, and I got my role starting in 2018. But I started working with our parent company in 2009, and that was just as a sensory technician. It was a very entry-level position, and I was in charge of quality control taste testing. And I learned a lot in that role, and really about the defects you can find in all the spirits that Brown-Forman produces, but most importantly for my work today, what defects you find in distilled spirits, so such as whiskey. And I really developed a strong passion to understand those quality defects and where they come from. And so then I just got out to the distilleries and started learning more and understanding the production process and all that goes into it. And by 2014, I was asked if I wanted to train to be a master taster, and I did that with Chris Morris. And in 2015, I became master taster for both Woodford and Old Forester. And in 2016, I was moved out to work in production out at Woodford Reserve as senior quality control specialist and master taster exclusively for Woodford. And then 2018, I got promoted to assistant master distiller for Woodford Reserve. So it was a quick ride, but one where I've learned a lot along the way.
Okay, great. We talked to earlier. We talked to Jackie Zykan, the current master taster at Old Forester. So love to see that there is that connection there. And interestingly, you are second generation in the spirits industry, but it's all good. We love a dog. He's fine. You are, you're second generation in the spirits industry, but you didn't intend to get into the spirits industry. Tell us a little bit about that path.
Yeah. So my mother did work for Seagram's, which is now kind of the plant in Lawrenceburg where they still make alcohol. She was in quality control for the bottling line. And so she worked in a very different environment than what I'm working in now. But so that was kind of the first, and we didn't really talk about it much until later in my career. So my mom did work in distilling, and now she's more of just a beer drinker and she does enjoy some double oaked every once in a while. But then, so my educational path, I didn't have a desire to go into the beverage alcohol industry. When I graduated with my graduate degree in 2009, I got my degree in counseling psychology. So I was planning to become a therapist. I thought I would have an office with a couch and sit down and do therapy with people. And then just the stars aligned really. And I found out about a job at Brown-Forman, and it was in sensory as a technician. It was a very entry level, and I applied for it. But the thing is that they like people with psychology backgrounds for that role, specifically because you're using human beings as your instrument and looking at how a human responds to things. And I had that understanding, as well as the methodology, understanding of how to set up an experiment, and also the statistical analysis piece needed for the job. And so that's really what got my foot in the door. But I knew nothing. I mean, I didn't know that whiskey was clear when it came off the still. I didn't really think about it much. And then it was like I was touring the lab on one of my interviews, and actually Chris Fletcher, who's now the master distiller for Jack Daniels, he was my hiring manager, and he was showing me around and showed me a bottle of the Jack Daniels new make and was like, "Hey, smell this. And this is Jack Daniels because before it becomes Jack Daniels, this is it right off the still." And it was really cool seeing that. So I knew nothing about distilled spirits.
Okay. Were you a whiskey drinker at that time? Did you enjoy it, or?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's almost embarrassing to say, but I was a poor, graduate college student. And so I was drinking either cheap beer or probably a vodka soda. I mean, it's almost, I feel like those are words that people in the whiskey world are like, "Oh God, no." Yeah. But it's true, because I honestly didn't really know how to drink whiskey. It was a brown spirit that I was like, well, what do you mix it with? And of course I was like, you have to mix everything. And now that doesn't even apply. I don't rarely do that. But you learn as you grow up.
Okay. Okay. And as you grew, what was, from that to now as a drinker, how has your palate evolved, if you will? What's what is the one of the more interesting things you've learned about whiskey along this journey?
Well, I think I've learned to really appreciate whiskey. And I think that's one of the things in this role when I get the opportunity to do tastings with individuals, and especially when it's somebody who brings a friend along that's like, oh, I'm just here because I thought it would be a fun evening event and I'm not really a whiskey drinker. And I just say, well, I hope you participate in the tasting, because whiskey is not just something you sling back. It's really a drink to be appreciated and to sip on. And there's so many nuances. It's magic. I mean, what happens to create the whiskey in these bottles is just, it is magic. And I was talking to a consumer the other day about that magic, that we can do a lot to understand and analyze what goes on to make the product. But it's the randomness of the barrel that you can't quite put a science around how it matures and why this distillate was distilled on the same day and it tasted the same going into the barrel. But then when it comes out of the barrel, it tastes totally unique. And so I've developed a strong appreciation and just a desire to want to sit and sip my whiskey and just hang out with it for a while.
And you, obviously, you are a woman. We're talking to you and several other folks for Women's History Month. What does being a woman in whiskey mean? And I know that obviously has several connotations, but tell me from your vantage point.
Yeah, being a woman in whiskey, I think what the biggest opportunity that I see is that we are able to bring an actual woman's perspective to the products. So for so long, whiskey was marketed to women by men. And now we have women working and making the spirit and having a say-so in the grain recipe and how it's finished and fermentation. We're having an impact on that. And then we have more women on the marketing side and the sales side. So we're able to kind of speak to women in a way that women have never been spoken to before, because we can lend that real life experience perspective. I often get asked, what's it like being a woman in a male dominated industry? And I say, well, I've never been a man in a male dominated industry. So I don't know anything different than what I know, which is Absolutely. I get up and work hard and go to work every day.
And to that extent, obviously you've had several wins at Woodford. What is, when you think back on your tenure, what's like something you think about that is something that you and the team worked on that you're really proud of or passionate about?
Well, one of the things I'm really passionate about and super excited and still kind of pinch myself and go, is this real? Is this really happening? I recently got involved, or I guess it's been a few years now, with the Kentucky Rye Project. That's the abbreviated version, but basically a team of experts trying to bring the production of grain growing back to Kentucky for commercial use. So for a long time, I think growers would use it as a cover crop in the winter, which it has a multitude of benefits to that from an environmental standpoint and soil health, water health. But then we haven't let it go to seed because the environment here is weird. And so Woodford's involved as signing up to be an end user in that, meaning we'll have the farmers have the rye go to seed. We can collect that rye, and we've made several batches of Woodford Reserve using Kentucky grown rye. And it's a long project. We're committed for at least another 10 years to study what the flavor differences are and all that. And I've been a very integral part of that process. And it's been amazing that I've been able to say, well, I want to meet these farmers and get their rye and make Woodford with it. And being able to have a say-so in that is pretty remarkable.
Okay. And you mentioned double oaked earlier, and I think I've read a couple of times that that's is that still your personal favorite expression of the line? Or?
Yeah, I would say it is. I feel it always feels wrong to pick what your favorite, saying it's your favorite. You've all these children and that one's your favorite. But I do love double oaked. I think I have a soft spot in my heart for it because it was the first whiskey that I ever had just neat or on the rocks. And it's just so easy to sip on like that it was very it was like, oh, I've joined the big boy club or the big girl club of drinking whiskey just without having to mix it or put it in a cocktail. And it's just so easy to enjoy that way.
So is that also when you're doing those tastings or you're introducing people, is that what you start with, or how do you tell us a little bit about how you start that process?
When we're going on a tasting journey, I like to say it's a journey because I think whiskey is just always evolving and there's so many facets to how to taste it and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I always like to introduce people to our standard, I hate saying standard, but our original, our Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon, and taste them through that and then have them taste the double oaked, because having the comparison is really fun. And it's interesting to see how we've changed nothing between the two products other than the finishing of the double oak barrel. So it allows people to explore that and kind of explore differences in whiskey and be able to really see the pop of sweet aromatics that double oak brings to the table.
Okay. And I know you guys recently did a double oak. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so double oaked was one of those oops that distilleries sometimes have. We had barrels that our spec for the double oaked is a 6 to 12 month finish. And we had barrels that went over the 12-month finish. And so Chris Morris said, well, let's just hold them back and let them go for 24 months and see what happens. And I'll never forget sitting down in his office to taste the first time we'd ever tasted it, to see how it was going. And I was like, oh, it'll just be a lot sweeter, just like the double oak, but sweeter. And it really shifted from being sweet, so the butterscotch, caramel, vanilla that double oaked is, to a dark chocolate, kind of coffee, roasted notes, all these big, bold, sweet notes, but they're the sweet spice notes, if you will.
And obviously, as someone who has to drink for a living, part of their job, what is that? So let's talk a little bit about like work-life balance. Like, what do you do? I saw your beautiful dog earlier. Like, how do you strike that balance with doing something that is not drinking or know?
Navigating through being pregnant while doing this job was interesting. I mean, you can expectorate, so spit out, and I'll do that. Like when I was pregnant, I did that, and then but managing it, it's like if I spend the day at the distillery hosting personal selections where we're tasting barrel samples, I'll come home and either I just don't have a drink and that's fine, or I'll enjoy red wine, or but making sure you're taking breaks. And I always make sure I have a glass of water before. It's like you have to drink this whole glass of water before you have your next drink, just taking a moment to pause and just not over imbibe. And I certainly don't drink every day. And, but I just know that it's something I do because I enjoy it, not because I feel like I need to. And if I ever get to that point, I think that's when I will seek help, because that's a huge difference between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. And what else are you working on at whether Woodford? Like, what's an upcoming passion project that you guys have coming up, or anything you can talk about?
Yeah, we have quite a few. We have our distillery series releases that we're working through right now. And so those are slated to come out this summer and this fall. And those, of course, are only offered at our distillery and then select Kentucky retailers. And so that one is going to be, and I'll give our little hints on what they might be. And so the one that's coming out in the summer will be a double oaked version of something. So be looking for that. If you're a double oaked fan, you'll enjoy this expression. And then we have another one that's been finished in a special local agricultural type of barrel. That's all I'll say. And it's going to be very interesting. And then, of course, looking forward to next year's Masters Collection release. That is a play on maturation. And I think people are going to go crazy for it. It pulls on the history of whiskey and how they used to mature whiskey. And so if you're a fan of it's not a finish, it's a maturation play. So the way that we put the whiskey into the barrel is different. And it's really rich, beautiful whiskey. So I'm excited to see what people think about that one.
Awesome. So we're gonna end on a fun note with a couple of fun questions. So, favorite city to drink in that's not in Kentucky. We're not gonna put Louisville on the spot or Lexington. Outside of the state of Kentucky, what's your favorite drinking city of choice?
Anywhere on a beach. Like put me in Florida on a beach and enjoy a cocktail watching the sunset. be real nice, real nice.
Okay, perfect. And lastly, if you could have a drink with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and what would that drink be?
And I saw this question and I was like, oh, this is a hard one. And because there's so many different ways to play it. But I think after I thought about it, I thought I would love to have a drink with, and I picked sort of two, either one of my grandmothers. They're both passed. And I'd love to just know what the world was like, because they would be, they were born in the early 1900s, and then what it was like as their experience as a woman during that time, and then talk to them about my experience now. And I know that they didn't really drink that much either. I mean, my one grandmother had her glass of sherry every night, but my other grandmother, I don't think she drank that much. And I wonder if that was a choice or if it was because of the time that she was living in.
Well,
or was it a secret?
There you go. Maybe it was something in a teacup.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
yes. We'll cheers to both of them and cheers to you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you.
conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.